Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to yet another installment as we go across this year. The energies are high right now. We're going to have a little bit, I just had it now, little interference. Hopefully the system won't pick it up, but I can hear it bumping in. I think we have a lot of energetic interest or support for this conversation today because it's bedrock. This is another episode of Esoterics Today. I am the Suburban Lightworker, your host, Amber Chamberlain, and we have with us, as always, our guide to the stars, Satara Jules Lightbringer. And it's always good to see you, Satara. Welcome to another episode.
Yeah, always good to see you. It's always great when we hook up. Looking forward to it.
I know. We go like, oh yeah, we mad dash through our 3 to 4th density lives here, and then we realize we need to get this done, and we want to get this done, and then when we come, it's such a pleasure. It feels so good. Yeah. So let me introduce to you all today. We're calling this the One Infinite Timeline. And from the title, you're going to understand that we're talking about oneness and what that really is. And we're talking about timelines and what that really is as well. And I'm reminded to say, I think a colleague out in the Wild West of information and ideas, and this would be referencing Corey Good at the moment, he will say, remember everyone, no one's going to get this perfectly right. Our words will fail, our constructs will fail to really describe and to really be the absolute truth. But it's what we humans have to be able to come together and to approximate and give pieces of what is truth. So this is what we seek to do in Esoterics Today. And I can't think of anybody better to do it than two midlife ladies, one from the US and one from the UK, who just are versed in various narratives that we're all in the consciousness world dealing with. All of that said, and we do have some, are you hearing that interference, Satara?
I'm getting it here too as well. I think it's just the fact that, shall we just say our rooms are busy?
Yeah. These conversations attract our fractal aspects, better way of putting it, and some of the teachers too come forward, who, of course, we're all one, and we're going to talk about that, but it gets, when the energy is in the vibratory resonance that we are really bringing into our language, it sort of just comes into our emanation and comes into our field, and it gets funny. All right, so Satara, what would you like this conversation to focus on around what is oneness for this conversation?
I think that we need to just again reiterate that everything is just one. Everything really is, shall we say, for the points of the recording, me. Every last thing that I can see and perceive is me, including you. You're me as well. Your painting on the wall is me. Everything is manifested to just be part of the one. Each one of us is just a small fractal of the one, which takes a bit of swallowing initially, because we're like, okay, I don't particularly like that, I don't know, lamp over there, but that's still part of me. So what is that telling me about me? And it just helps us to start to hook into that deeper work of remembrance, that regardless of whether we resonate with something or not, regardless of what that is, whether that's a person, whether that's a building, whether that's a plant, whatever that is just telling us that there is still something within the one that we need to work upon.
So from my perspective, because that's a great primer to the one and to all is one, and I'm fortunate that you are me and I am you. I feel very grateful.
Very much.
Because there's a lot that I am holding in my field that I resist, I bank up against, I push up against, that is also me.
Yes.
What I will add on to what Satara is saying, that in our, and first of all, I want to clarify the lamp is me. What
Yes.
Satara, I think, is describing is a subatomic structure, for those who like to understand it from quantum physics and quantum mechanics. She's referencing the fact that everything at a molecular structure, protons, neutrons, and even what is yet to be published into the information in the fourth density planet that we are today, because we are, is all us. That we are, and the way I tell the oneness story is, I manifested this holographic existence with all of its bells and whistles. My living room furniture, this conversation, my mug, and this coffee, that I dialed into it. I dialed in because everything has location code, everything has numeric reference, everything, and it begins, everything has color, everything has geometry. I'm saying this all from all my brothers and sisters who know it from different storylines. And thank you, my little computer just buzzed back, chirped at me. Because, okay, here comes Sirius B, right? Sirius A and B, right? Gets in here and is like, oh, I'm listening. And we are holding this program, this computer program, this holographic environment with all of its location codes and subatomic information, its geometric information. We are literally that magnificent. To have created an embodiment experiment and experience. But the karmic story, as we trace back to the monad, to source, for those of you who know it from this part of the story, the karmic patterning that we came kind of preloaded with upon agreement into this embodiment has only aspects of it that we are still playing out from the oneness. So this is why you look the way you do. The lamp is the way it is, because I am in my embodiment playing all this out as I am growing in consciousness. So I wanted to offer that about the oneness story too. Was this a good pairing?
Yeah, I like that. I like that particularly. Yeah, I like how you paint your picture.
I like how you paint your picture.
I do. I'm more like everything from the micro to the macro is you. And that's usually as far as I kind of get. End of my thought process.
And I go into the mechanics from a few
totally.
different directions, because we have people who tune into this who know it from some portion of one of those lines. I offer about 5 or 8 lines of frequency that points to the same place that you began.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people need to have that. Yeah. Because of our infinite uniqueness, we will never cover the full range of what someone needs to understand within what we're covering. But we can at least broaden the brushstrokes.
And we trust as we spoke a little earlier about the timed trigger.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a word, sometimes it's a construct, sometimes it's just a look, sometimes it's a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Right. Something bounces back in your framework that you go, I find that whole architecture just landed.
Yeah. It just goes click. That program is quietly uploaded. And we go, yeah, we get that. Not all of it, but we get that bit of it. And once we've got that bit of it, we can, like, you know, sort out the hard drive, get the information flowing a bit and go, great, I need a patch now for it.
Develop the patch. So you guys, we're going to now shift ourselves in our time frame here to timelines. But before we do that, I want to mention the very last part, and I think the biggest part of the show here today is going to be then, how does this, what other, you know, you know me, I like to stay out of what I call consciousness and spirituality porn.
Mhm.
I think staying in the higher registers of frequency and bliss energy, though we need to go into bliss regularly each day, I think to kind of clear the decks and to feel good because of the density here. I watched a large cohort of this community for years try to go stay there. And they tried to live their 3D, 4D. And we still have a lot of people who do that. They're trying to hold those frequencies into this resonance. And there's a role for that too. But for my kind of person, for Satara's kind of person, and the bulk of majority of you all who come to this, we are for you. Otherwise, you're over there watching what I call the spiritual porn and the consciousness porn, which I think is beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I'm no, I've enjoyed some of that. Still do. But it is not my daily walk, and it's not my daily walk as a teacher. I'm here, Satara's here for you well, yeah, that's all great. And my concepts and my constructs are here, but that don't mean a thing with what I'm doing to earn cash flow in my life, for how I'm taking care of my family, for what I'm doing for my elderly parents, or for the fact that I have to go buy a new car because I just had a car accident. I mean, because by the way, all that's happening to me.
Oh, right.
But it is to you too.
Yeah,
so
of course.
What I think happens in our community is the broader community on the spiral, the consciousness spiral. If we're not careful, we impoverish ourselves.
Yeah.
We damage our daily relationships needlessly. We try to foist and force our constructs onto others because we need to have a mirror in front of us that say, we believe you, we agree with you, and we understand you. Believe me, I'm only talking from experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's all we can ever do, isn't it? Just know that's what has happened to us on our trudge at times here, rather than our blithe walk.
But do you know what I'm saying about that applicability story?
Yeah.
Have you seen what I've seen?
Yeah, very, very much so. And it's just the way that it goes here, isn't it? Everything is perfect here because everything has a place. Everything has a place to play out. There's role playing going on across every last one of me. Yeah.
And I am a willing participant. I think that I'm no victim. You're no victim to your circumstances. We arrive here quite willingly and capably, but there are some things afoot on our planet relative to larger energetics at play, which, by the way, are us also.
Yeah.
That then have programming, intrusive design, have intrusive in the sense of, the unpleasant stuff, sort of polarization, the service to self polarization versus the service to others polarization. That's all us, but there's a lot of incredible dynamic at play, and we can get sort of, socked under with that. So let's move now to timelines. For this crowd who tunes in here, the kind of folks to come this way and find this at all interesting, because I can imagine a vast majority going, oh, what the hell is that? And that's so boring and slow. Or I have no idea what they're talking about and why they'd spend their time on it. For those that do listen to this, Satara, what is a timeline?
Okay, we will go from the basics of this. I'm going to literally roll back time to do the timeline story as well. So in the beginning, when this holographic reality was created, there was one single timeline that began. And that was basically because we are still manifesting what we needed around us. So there was one set of ideas, one set of ideologies, if you like, that any beings, plants, everything that was created had one focus for what they were doing. And that created the first timeline. It was then everything was all harmonious, has been referred to as things like the Garden of Eden, which is a perfect analogy for everything's living harmoniously, everybody's quite all right. And then one being goes, nah, we need to shake this up a bit. What are we going to do? Here begins the second timeline. You then have the balance to that first one that was all harmonious. We then have the second one that's starting to be out of harmony with it. So it's starting to go, oh, right, so you're saying that's black, are you? Nah, I say it's white. And we have this first ripple that creates two realities within the one reality. And that is called simply a timeline. And as each thought process started to diversify, as more beings came in, more flora and fauna came in, as we expanded ourselves, we started to diversify even more. And with each turn, we created a further timeline. And what the timelines do, they create an idea of separation. So from all walking here, we're now walking here, 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 and it's rippling out all the way across the reality. And that is allowing for each of us to choose the reality that we sit better in to experience that facet of the reality that we are most in need of grasping in that one fractal, which is why we are all learning so much all of the time within the timelines.
So the story that Satara told is a beautiful rendition for conceptualization, I think. Another conceptualization I think that's beneficial that layers into this is here is source.
Yeah.
Just source. Some traditions say it was an I. What's
the all-seeing.
The all-seeing eye.
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, so if you can imagine just an eye, just source. And it got a little boring.
Yeah. And thought it would rock it up a bit.
And so, source, that's that eye, or the point of source, the monad, yes, then decided to project another point. Then we have a line, don't we, in geometry, which is bringing geometry up to. And then that begat another line. And now we have a triangle, don't we? And then you begin to see dimension. This is all about timelines too, is it not?
It is indeed.
And for me as a girl in the south of the US, on a farm, somewhere as a girl, as I really felt the voice of God, I identified as, for me in a Southern Christian tradition, just because that's the platform I came into, was the voice of Jesus, because I didn't know what else that would be, and it seemed quite normal. The teacher, Jesus the Christ. I came to understand through that relationship, just inside myself, that, oh, I was him. How I know it's not him nor her, but then it was, back during that heavy dose of patriarchy, it was him. In other words, I was part of God, expressing God's self. Yeah, the projection the line? Do we see? Are we beginning to bring this together? Our child's sort of telling it.
The
So
inner
I,
temple.
so I began to understand, and I have mentioned this a couple of times, that by the time I was in maybe my early 20s, I saw the first Mandelbrot chaos, a Mandelbrot design. That's why I'm very mathematical. Um, at the time I was married, and the man I was with had he had very engineering, and he got onto what was called Mosaic at the time. I've mentioned this in some other shows. He got into something called Mosaic, which was the precursor to the internet. Sort of a collective, when you could only go out and look at documents and mathematical figures. And he left on his screen one day. He said, "Hey, come look at this. Come look at this." And I laid eyes on what he said. This is a Mandelbrot. He had to say it a few times. And I looked closely, and it was this gorgeous paisley pattern. If you wonder why paisley can come back around and around generationally into our clothing and into designs, it's because it is a mathematical signature.
Yes.
Because if you look at a paisley and look closely at more paisleys, what you begin to see is it's the perfect patterning infinitum.
Very much so.
So I saw God. In other words, I realized that I was just another aspect of God knowing itself. Got bored, want to know some things, more things. And it's not just so what Satara was showing you with hands was this way. Yeah. And what I'm going to remind you of from a geometric and that there are actual angles of fractalization of timelines, okay, that are infinitely dimensional, and we as fractals are along. Did you see what Satara just did? You didn't see that, Satara. You'll see it, I hope, on the replay.
Okay.
You just disappeared and came back.
Okay.
My left eye just caught it. It popped in and out.
I am just a glitch in the matrix.
Right. I hope that's going to just show up. I just saw it. You just went out and back. Because we're talking about, she just showed you. It was interesting. So we go wide. We're at every station, how should I say this, along the timeline, because
we're on every node of the timeline.
We're on every node of the timeline, backwards and forwards, crossways, up and down, and we can find aspects of self. So when Satara, you notice my light is changing when I'm talking about all this. What we're referring to here, and I'm going to turn back to Satara to take us a little further in the timelines story, because we've laid this groundwork. When you hear about generational pain or generational karma, or something that you've brought that's a generational stream, okay, into this current lifetime, this is what we're talking about. And if you want to heal on the timeline, heal something on the timeline, we can talk about all those sorts of things, but this is what we're referring to. Yeah. Okay, so Tara, I think I went just as usual. I brought some other storylines that our peers are going to recognize some of themselves on this discussion. So what is it that you think bring the oneness story and the timeline story together? You just did it again. You're going to see.
I'm glitching.
Well, because you know what you did? You are glitching because you let your consciousness go with me along those nodes. Mm-hmm. And I just saw what you just mentally flashed to me. And yes, we do that, and we do it with more than just each other. What Satara did is, I was describing all that, and she went and looked at a couple of places. Yeah. I just saw you, and you can talk about that. But tell us to bring, what do you want that story about? What else do you want to say about the oneness and the timelines?
What I want to say is that once we get this deep knowing and understanding of the oneness and the fact that timelines are on now, that really there isn't any past, future, it's all now, that then allows us to be released in a way from our current timeline to be able to, shall we term it, to become a hitchhiker of the cosmos, because we are then able to tune into the other nodes that we've been talking about on the timelines, to be able to step into other aspects of ourselves, to be able to experience other facets of ourself deeply. Now, for a lot of people, they will know that stepping into another aspect of themselves, they will know that as remote viewing. Now, they probably won't realize that when they've been remote viewing, that they've stepped into another human, perhaps, because they will just be able to be seeing the scene. But what they've actually done is stepped into a fractal that is close to them energetically, and they've been able to just see through their eyes, breathe through their nose for whatever amount of time has been needed for them to view an event. And that event can be what's happening now, it can be 1,000 years ago, it can be 1,000 years in the future, whatever they've decided they need to remote view. Because remote viewers hop from a 3D perspective, and they're able to time hop because they know that we're all one, and they know that they can just hook into a particular resonance, a particular timeline, time reference, and be able to experience it.
So Tara, then describe, because I think before we become conscious and be able to self-manipulate those exposures, self-choose in conscious awakened time, that's what we're doing in astral travel. So can you talk about what's happening in astral travel where timeline and oneness is concerned?
Certainly, it's very, very similar to the whole remote viewing aspect of things, because again, when we're astral traveling, we're actually placing that essence of ourselves. Most people would view astral traveling as the soul leaving the body to experience. So if we work it from that point of view, because I think that's what most people would understand it as, so as the soul exits the body and goes a roaming, it will be roaming again with another aspect of self. It won't just, I'm just going to pop off for a bit. It will actually then join with an aspect of itself. Now, because everything is itself, that aspect can just be air particles. It can just be, you know, water molecules within the air that it is blending with to be able to get the experience it is needing to experience. We literally use whatever vehicle is comfortable for us.
Now, I want to.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I was going to say, so when we are able to, most people who astral travel exit the body and actually look back at the body and go, oh, right, you're still there. That's great. I know where I'm coming back to. I'm off.
Right.
And off we trundle. Without the conscious thought of what is giving that vehicle, that willingness, A, to travel, but also the vehicle within the vehicle to travel.
And you have said to me before that to pay attention in my own experiences, to pay attention, to learn to look at the vehicle I'm traveling in myself.
Yeah.
Because I don't, my perception is most of the time I'm me, but the truth is if I would really learn to look, I would see. And I do have a sense of that. And I do in waking consciousness sometimes get moved into another form that I can see, which is sometimes what I think people will call, because it happens to a lot of people, and I think it's what they will think of as past lives. And when really, I'm just having this experience in myself on another part of the timeline. And I can have that conscious, and I've been that way since I was a child. I can have that awareness. And by the way, the only reason Satara and I can talk so adeptly about all this, it's not like we spent an enormous time in front of a bunch of textbooks and other people's videos. We've actually, this is, we don't say this very often, I think, or maybe even sometimes often enough. It's just our own personal experiences. And we just,
very much so.
And
I'm probably the world's worst for not paying any attention to what anybody else here does. I don't read any of the spiritual books. I don't watch any of the videos. I have no interest in it whatsoever. I've got enough going on in my own reality to keep me going nicely, thank you, without having to, you know, experience other aspects of myself or experiencing.
Right. And I think that due to, depending on what you call it, and again, I mention this, I try to mention this almost every show, the Great Awakening, the event horizon, I mean, the ascension, the wow, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever anybody is calling it these days. What do the kids call it these days? But the truth is, there is a quickening of a gathering. See, that's another name for it, the Great Gathering. It's just about an evolution of consciousness because the planet herself is
very much so.
In a harmonic existence. And listen, science bears this out in terms of just reminding this crowd, in case you're new to what comes to come to this conversation.
And the thing is, let's face it, every timeline that is possible is already here, which means that every density and vibration is already here. So when we talk about the fact that we're transfiguring into the next vibration, it is just that the greater consciousness is starting to move into a different vibration as a general thing.
And on that point right there, Satara, as we move into the applicability in the day-to-day way with this conversation, because that's where I like to end up with us in conversation, these highly esoteric tools and understandings. On that note, gosh, I'm almost lost it because I traveled with you on that too.
Sorry.
But where did you end up on that?
Yeah, I was kind of the same. I was like, okay, I see where I am. Right, okay.
No, but about the, because let's go back to 101 consciousness. Thoughts are things. Yeah. Emotions as the juice. Okay? Thoughts are things, they build. Thoughts are building tools. So where two or more are gathered, right? 3 or more are gathered, and we gather in consciousness and share this content, we are actually constructing geometrically, mathematically, what we're all choosing to experience, which is this next level, this next stage along the harmonic. I'd like to bring that in because I wasn't sitting around having this level of conversation and dialogue a decade ago. We're having it now increasingly, our kind, because we are building the civilization that has been here many times over, but the planet herself is ready for that experience. This time human beings are going with her. Usually they get kind of wiped out, and a few go in Earth and a few go elsewhere into some of the anomalies, etc.
Yeah.
For those of you who know it that way.
Yeah, known as the receding.
Well, look at that. See, known as the receding makes sense, doesn't it? So I just wanted to position us, because I think, Satara, that keeping us in sort of a positioning of why we have these conversations and why we've been brought together. You like to mention the randomness of it all. I think some of that randomness of it all comes from your background of being an early bringer and first waver of this next acceleration. And we had to learn to kind of talk it like that because people couldn't hear the conversation that we can have now.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, over the years, you know yourself, I tutor groups, I tutor one-on-one, I do all sorts of weird and wonderful workshops and things for people to be able to move the consciousness to a greater level. But even people who are like, oh yeah, I love the idea of that workshop, will not hear you. Because for part of that is going to be beyond what they are ready in their suits to hear. Therefore, they can miss whole chunks of it.
She says in their suits, she's referring to their form. I know you just flashed on a 1980s, like big shoulder pad, purple jacket. Not the case she's referring to. But I totally get it because, right, and what Satara is saying there is, remember you all as light workers, because if you're on this conversation, starseeds and light workers is what you are. Even if you think you're listening to this because we seem interesting and ha ha ha, maybe something to giggle over with your friends, watch out. You're about to be snapped wide awake because you don't come to us unless you're about to break out, or you're going deeper. But because when you come to our courses or you come to our conversations and our sessions, what you're coming to is an awakening event. And it's not necessarily the words that we're saying to each other. It's the emanations that are shared because you are me. I am you. And you have manifested this moment to have yet a deeper understanding of self in this skin suit she's referring to. So let's go into, for the next, what's remaining about 50, let's go into a good 15-minute discussion of, so what, Satora? So what? I have a job, I have raising a family, I have meals to cook, cars to buy, parents to take care of, organizations to attend. I'm a volunteer for the school system. So the hell what? I know this arcane, archaic, cosmic, mystical crap. So what?
Nice one. It's all about where we have come in and what we have decided our mission is within the fractalization of the one, basically. So yeah, we have all of the 3D stuff going on. We have the random, I gotta wash the car things and all this stuff that like is just beyond basic. But it's
primitive is what we think, really.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
People are primitive.
Unbelievable
on the
stuff.
So they've been the consciousness measured. We still have people on the planet, a large swath that are primitive, and then we have another swath that are developing. But those are the two largest portions of measured consciousness on the planet. We are living with Luddites. Go forward.
not Luddites, okay. Yeah, very much so. So it's like, but we still have to experience this dense level of randomness, because part of what we're learning is we've been given a suit, which we don't always have. In fact, we very rarely have an actual suit that we're in. And we're given this to learn what we need to do to take care of the suit. And that is a big learning, which is why we've wanted the human experience, because we wanted to see what that was like. Because most of the early experiments that were brought forward when beings were created as aspects of the one, the beings didn't really have a suit. Because we didn't have a suit. So when people talk about light beings, a light being is just a shape or form, is made purely out of the original Im and Om. Now, Im and Om are light and sound. So to bring that into a denser reality, that light and sound has had to get denser. Therefore, the 12-strand race DNA was created for us to be able to be with it, which can be interesting.
Im and are also something we can see as source, and then that first turn. And that was something I wanted to mention, by the way. In the understanding of geometry, we understand the point and then a turn that the point makes.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the flower of life, if you will, when we're talking about
the Fibonacci spiral.
When we're talking about Merkaba,
yeah.
And when we're talking about platonic solids, I'm putting out some, right. When we talk about platonic solids, and those are the building blocks of all structures, human, planetary. And I want you to talk about that right there. Hold it back up.
Yes, Mother.
I want you to see what that is.
Yeah, it's basically a dodecahedron, which is made up of triangles, which when we were talking before, we've talked about the monad creating the one line, the second line to create 3D, which is the initial triangle. Each of these triangles can see that is split into another 3 triangles.
See all those pyramids, everybody?
Yeah, totally. So that little beauty there has 108 sides, which 108 means a lot to an awful lot of people on this planet, because it is the Buddhist 108 mantra. Is based on the shape 2. So whenever you get things like mala beads for the prayer beads, they are 108 beads in a prayer bead, which is basically a different representation of this simple sacred geometry shape.
And dodecahedron is one of the platonic solids.
It is indeed.
Okay. So what we're pushing, these conversations are representations of the basis of all life.
Yeah, very much so.
Really what we're talking about when we talk about oneness, when we talk about timelines and karmic patterns and monad and source and sacred geometry. I mean, there's so many beautiful narrative streams kept in the Kahanic and the Akash that we come into and are able to talk about, imagine about, dream about, that creates civilization. This is the Pleiadian dream, the Syrian dream, the Lemurian dream. Referencing, there's a lot of history around what our religions are built on. It's just an amazing, we're getting kind of far afield out of the day-to-day. What does this mean to me lately? So Satya, I want to mention, so from a relationship standpoint, let's talk about human relationship, like lovers and friends.
Yeah.
What is oneness and timelines? How does that come into play in our personal relationships, lovers, friends, children?
Well, if I kind of generalize it first and then drill it down, when we talk about like timelines, we all have our own individual timeline kind of going on, which we can invite people onto or move away from at any one point. So if we're all coming from the same point of reference on a page, we will all quite happily be congregating on one timeline, which is a merge of many, but a merge of what is on the same frequency. So the frequency that we hold brings us together to allow for this like timeline merge, which is, I'll use us, the two of us, as a good example of that. We got to kind of pretty much late 40s, early 50s before we came across each other. But that is because we weren't on the same page at that point. And that's another way of talking about timelines, when people say they're not on the same page as somebody else. And that is just another analogy that we have brought here as humans to kind of explain it without thinking about what we're saying with that. So once we're on the same resonance, we get like a timeline merged together. This is when we attract our friends, our lovers, our significant people in our lives that are all on the same page, therefore all on the same merged timeline. Of course, it doesn't necessarily follow that we always stay on the same timeline. Both of us here have got ex-husbands that we moved away from for whatever reason. Our timelines have gone, yep, that was a lovely merge, that was fantastic there. I'm off now. And we've literally just moved apart, and they will carry on to whatever resonance they're on, and we move into whatever resonance we're on. Earlier, Amber mentioned the need of a new car, having had a, what should we call it, fender bender. So to me, I think, oh, that's fantastic. I look at the other flip side of this because I think, great, that means she'd outgrown the one that she was in, and it was no longer functioning for what she needed it to function to on a vibrational level. Therefore, it has been moved to one side to make room for the new one that's coming, that will be more of Amber's new resonance. So
and it was actually my husband's car, but you know, he is me, and that car was mine too. And
exactly,
so it still applies, everybody.
It does. So you were ready to move on to the next expression of vehicle. Therefore, bye-bye, gone. But more interesting as well is that somebody came onto your timeline to facilitate that for you, but also they were facilitating it for themselves, which shows that one of you was having some resistance to moving to that next level. So there was this convergence point of the two timelines just hitting each other up for a few minutes to be able to shake everybody up into the next level of what they needed.
And that is, I'm glad that we gave such a black and white example. And what I don't want to miss out on what Satara is saying there is, and this, the car, the person that converged with their car, and etc., and the new car is all me.
It's all you. Just a different aspect that's coming forward of you.
And look at the complexity. If we had this if we had it in the notes of a song, it would be a symphony. Clues to symphonies. If we had if we had it in the colors of the rainbow, all that complexity. Understanding about light. Yeah. If we had what she just described in terms of geometric forms, what we would have is a dodecahedron something.
Yeah.
Or if we had it in terms of how a civilization is built, all of a sudden I could see buildings and trees and forests. I'm knitting together your conceptualization of what we're talking about Oneness and Timelines, and how they're actually built by conscious awareness and unconscious lack of awareness. I feel like, are these called Easter eggs?
Yeah, they are indeed.
I do a lot of Easter egging on this show, don't I?
We do indeed, yeah.
So we can go off and go, huh?
I said, thank you, not chocolate.
Thank God. You just can follow me. So, okay, so that's what it does with not just objects, but relationships, friends, and lovers. I want to offer on my end relationships, friends, and lovers, what that really comes down to from my perspective about oneness and timelines. I'm not so quick to jump ship in my relationships. I'm not so fast to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm able to soften my emotional impulse, which by the way is juice that fires up, just like pyramids. Another Easter egg. I will take that animus, that energy, especially when it's negative and irritability, and I will wait on it and I will work through it because I'm exploring something and I'm taking my time to bring to consciousness what is it that I'm exploring in myself. Because if I'm rejecting I'm rejecting something about myself, because I don't have to reject myself because I'm exploring that in this karmic pattern. And I don't know about you, Satara, but on this particular node, I intend to work it and evolve it like a champ, because I know to do so gives me all kinds of access in my awareness that I would not otherwise have in this skin suit.
Very much so, because if we're turning our back and just walking away for anything that seems difficult, hard, not quite on the same page fully as where we are limiting ourselves. Because
so I'm playing a game. To me, it's a bit of a strategic game.
Yeah. And it's called infinitum.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that I arrived here front-loaded with a karmic patterning that has aspects of things I'm still trying to work out in my total consciousness. And so I'm grabbing a hold of what those are, and I'm like playing them out. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So you gotta have a gaming spirit You have to be willing to go,
Yeah.
oh, uh-huh.
Yeah.
I just wanted to offer that because I think somewhere in the spiritual, I'm sorry to keep pushing it back to this because it is quite beautiful and delicious, but I'll call it that spiritual, etheric, cosmic form. You know, we'll go with, well, if you're not just resonating with me, if you're not going with me, if you don't believe me, if you're not into me and my ideas, and you're not right there with me, if you're not um, if you're not the Kuan Yin to my Saint Germain, then we can't do this.
Yeah.
I made you chuckle.
Yeah.
I slipped that trap. That dunk. So I can't tell you how you, first of all, you froze there because you went somewhere
Okay.
with Saint Germain and Kuan Yin. You went and looked. I just can watch her. And then our systems have done some bullfrog squawking. I mean, literally the energy in the system. You won't. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. So bringing this to the close of this, I think what we just did here, Satara, was we demonstrated a lot of things from the beginning of the conversation to this closure point. As we go to close up, what is it you want to say?
What I wanted to just remind people as well is that it's okay to jump timelines. Some people like cling to every last bit of the timeline they are on without having the tenacity to actually go, oh, hell, that one looks good over there on there. Yeah. So when we talk about jumping timelines, that is basically the timeline you are on, merging with the one that you like in the look of, the one that you're starting to resonate with, until you fully merge to that one. And then you can show that you can feel that you've done the work. A lot of light workers are able to feel those timeline jumps as well. I have always referenced them as glitches in the matrix for the best part of 20 years. Before the Matrix film came out, I was referencing them to glitches in the matrix. We all experience them differently, but I can actually watch like an energetic come over and sit there, and I watch another energetic peel back when I have fully left a timeline.
For those of you who are not able, who are just listening to this on podcast, on SoundCloud, I really encourage you to come over to our YouTube channel to watch the actual recording of the two of us. We did it this way on purpose to reach both platforms, but I'm noticing that we're seeing some anomalous things, some interesting things show up on this video, which is very primitive recording stuff on our Zoom. Because what you'll see with what Satara just did is she moved her hands. Again, she was holding the understanding and then moving her hand across it, and you saw some flickering across. It was really interesting to watch you do it, because when Satara and I are talking about these constructs, we are actually embodying them. We're bringing them as teachers into the moment, so you can experience them outside of just our words. That's part of being an esoteric consciousness teacher by design this lifetime. We carry these things into the moment. So I encourage you, if you're just listening, to go over and see what's happening sometimes. I'll try to point more of these out as we go. I think as we get into the second year of the show, there'll be more of this going on, because we've already covered in the first year a lot of the basics, and it's going to free us up to go much deeper, and you're going to start to see some things just sort of occurring, I think.
Yeah, I think so too, because the very nature of who we are, we have instant manifestation of what we need to have, the tools at our fingertips.
I'm going to leave us with, where I'd like you to be, just as you're going away from this conversation, as things pop up, just to be aware of how these constructs that you've sort of absorbed a little bit more from today, watch how they play out in your love relationships, your parenting, your work relationships. I think this kind of content for our kind tends to soften our acceptance of third dimensional to the fourth density living. I think it tempers us. Um, it, if we're not going to go live off in the the spiritual esoteric form community, because that's an important place too. Um, and we're doing it in this more traditional day-to-day way, living amongst all of us and doing it. I think it softens and is comforting to the psyche to know, okay, I know these things are at play. How do I harness them in a way that makes me more comfortable as I'm transiting through it? Because density is not comfortable. It is quite uncomfortable to highly sensitives. And it's no wonder that for the show today, Galarion showed up. Occurs to me, I guess, he must be on the green ray, Satara.
Yeah.
And if you'll
very
notice
much
what
so.
he's wearing, pick up your stone, your dodecahedron.
I'm going to pick up a different one because I've actually got the one there that he's wearing.
Right. He's wearing
Which we didn't know when we actually came together.
What is it that you were holding up?
That is just another of the dodecahedrons, but it is a different crystal form. So that more closely matches exactly what we have on Hilarion's chest. Hilarion is one of the green ray. The green ray speaks about healing. A lot of people will think of Archangel Raphael in exactly the same vein, because again, we're looking at the dark emerald greens and green hues of the healing rays. And
So
the vibration of green is healing.
So I'm reminded, and I'm reminding us and those of us in this conversation today, and it's definitely here for me too, is retreat, recharge, realign internal landscape, both in your home, inside, readjust, go within to just calibrate as we go out. We're doing so much in our day-to-day lives with our relationships, as we were mentioning, in our work and so forth, that our kind very often has to retreat and recharge.
Yeah, very much so. And we retreat and recharge in the green, in the trees, in the grasses, in whatever we can find that is going to be nurturing, which is, nature.
So that's what we leave you with. This was a wonderful episode of Esoterics today. Satara, I realize this is getting awfully close to, this is going to be the next to last show of the year.
It is. Our next show will be on the anniversary of our beginnings for our December show.
A lot has gone on. You guys, we wish you well. This is Esoterics today. I am Amber Chamberlain, the Suburban Lightworker. You can find me at Suburban Light, the Suburban Lightworker. Actually, either which one, I think, on Instagram, Suburban Light. You can find Satara Jules Lightbringer as Satara Jules Lightbringer Facebook, many other places.
You can, yeah. Temple of Stars is my...
But we're here.
Obviously.
Usually. But we are going to be back with you. We hope that you enjoy these. If you do, please share them with your friends as we all do this journey together. As we come together, we are part of a similar soul group, or we wouldn't be doing this with you. I'm glad to have you and share us, and please join us on YouTube as well. Much love, everybody. Much love, Satara. Always
much love to you. And we will see everybody soon. Much love. Bye.